Teachers, what's the weirdest thing you've had to take away from a student? A small trinket box, about palm-sized, decorated with gems and glitter, with a live mouse inside. The mouse was named Jimmy and had been caught in the child's house. This is my brother's story. And he was the kid. It was a sandwich bag full of spiders. He collected them during recess. And one of the monitors probably got freaked out. A kid brought blue Gatorade in a Windex bottle to lunch on April Fool's Day and we had to take it so younger kids wouldn't think it was real. There was a boy in my 7th grade class that wasn't allowed to have coins because he'd eat them. Christmas ornaments. They were throwing them at each other and it eventually caused a fight. Next to that would be a curtain rod. He found it and kept hitting people with it. Instant pudding. My student was mixing it in a large Cool Whip container, using milk from lunch, right in the middle of a lesson on Macbeth. A wine cooler that looked like a Capri Sun. This was a 2nd grader and she was just getting ready to drink it. Former teacher here. Wasn't part of the initial apprehension but was part of the follow-up investigation. Weirdest thing was a bag of turtles. Yep. Kid caught a bunch of the little salmonella-filled red-eared sliders at a local pond on his way to school one day. We had a turtle black market at the school by noon and by the end of the day the principal had a dozen in a bowl in his office. Kid got caught because a terrible smell was reported from his locker. Janitor opened it up and there was a bag of turtles. The rest of the day was spent tracking down the ones that had already been sold. Edit. I've owned a few reptiles as pets. To my knowledge small, under 4 inches, red-eared sliders have been illegal in the pet trade for quite some time due to a risk of salmonella in their skin. All turtles that were brought to school were under 4 inches. Principal released turtles to pond that evening. My sister's teacher had to call my dad about a suspicious powder my sister was eating out of a bag at school. She was dipping her finger in a bag of powdered jello and eating it and letting other kids do the same. In a somewhat similar vein, a dumb trend went around my school that consisted of kids violently snorting dib-dab powder, sherbet, then proceeding to scream in pain when they had a nosebleed and all pretend they were high. This was an all-girls school. Don't ever let the boys cool girls boring memes fool you. We also do dumb shit. Chef's knife stuffed in the waistband of his sweatpants, no underwear, during a snowstorm. An entire menagerie of live insects. One afternoon my class decided that they should see how many bugs they could capture and keep alive in my classroom. The next day, I returned from covering lunch duty in another part of the school and noticed that one of the cubbies had paper towel taped over the front like a curtain. Before I could investigate, I noticed several Tupperware containers hiding in desks. Dozens of worms, that was the cubby, many assorted beetles uncounted and 4 bees a wasp and, most upsetting, several flies which were crazy glued to index cards and had their wings removed. That was a long day in a long year. A girl had about 50 plastic spoons in her pocket. She tripped and tea all fell out. Panties. They had fallen out of a girl's gym bag in the previous class. When I came in the room after standing duty in the hall, 3 boys were flinging them back and forth across the room. Never a dull moment. Ziploc bags filled with water. That was a trend for a while at my school. Kids would claim they needed it in case they got thirsty, but usually would just try to pop them in each other's laps during class. A can of deodorant. You're probably thinking, oh, that's not that weird. Except that the 2 kids were using it by spraying it on the back of the other and then setting fire to the thing. In the middle of the class. Handcuffs. From an 8-year-old girl. Not quite police grade, but more than just some adult fun cuffs. Sent that down to the counselor. A giant head of lettuce that just suddenly appeared on his desk. Where did he get it? First thing that came to mind, a drawing of a peanut. One kid said he had a peanut allergy. So a boy drew a peanut on a piece of paper and started shoving it in the other boy's face and being a general dick with it. An uncooked chicken breast. Actually, 2 uncooked, boneless chicken breasts. The student had one in each pocket. Dual wielding salmonella. Not a teacher but a friend of a teacher. A letter to his other friend about how he once masturbated in class. Not a teacher but in 3rd grade the teacher had to confiscate all the origami cranes in the room because one kid decided to make and sell them at $0.25 a piece. He got caught when he started selling on the playground. I thought it was FK'd up we had to give up all the paper cranes in our desks but we didn't get our quarters back. I named mine Swan and was very sad to see her go. This seems pretty harmless. I don't understand why people bother. It's just kids stuff. Also your crane's name made me chuckle. Obligatory not a teacher. I'm an EA, educational assistant, in a school. Plastic spoons. Hundreds of them. I still don't know why. But one grade 5 kid came to school with his backpack stuffed full. Nothing else was in his backpack. Not even his lunch. He hung it on the back of the chair and pulled out a spoon and was fiddling around with it instead of doing work. So I took the spoon away. 10 minutes later he has another one. It took that. 10 more minutes a third. The teacher took it away. 10 minutes later another. You can see the pattern here. I finally opened his backpack when I saw him grab the 6th or 7th spoon. And the bag was full. Obviously the teacher had to call home since he had no lunch. Mom comes. Looks at him with just resignation. And goes why? As she hands him his lunch. He shrugged, grinned, and walked back to class. Mom is clearly used to it and has learned to go with the flow. A whole salami. Kid kept walking over to his backpack and sticking his face in to take secret bites without me noticing. I noticed. I'm not a teacher. But I taught my friend in 8th grade how to make pipe cleaner caterpillars. Since our school was discarding hundreds of bags of pipe cleaners. She found them all. Put them in her backpack. And made these caterpillars. The only thing is, she made around 1,000 of them until our teacher realized. The teacher tossed them in the garbage. But they just changed it. A can of Cheez Whiz. It was from a student visiting from another country. And she was enamored of the incredible canned cheese product she had discovered. So much so. She kept either opening her backpack to stare lovingly at it or taking it out during class to get some sweet cheesy goodness. It was pretty cute actually. And I made sure she got her cheese product returned to her at the end of class. Man did she love Cheez Whiz. Eyeballs. I worked with a blind student with autism. When he would get angry, he would pop out his glass eyeballs and throw them across the room. They were expensive. So mom asked that we put them in a plastic bag in his backpack if he threw them. No more eyeballs for you today. A picture they'd drawn of me in a teeny bikini. At the time I was a fairly out of shape man in my late 30s. Not a good look. The care they'd taken drawing a pair of gigantic pendulous breasts, which I don't have, was unsettling. The same student also wrote Forkrin in a bikini on a feedback form asking if there was anything they needed in class. Edit. 1. Obligatory thank you to everyone who stopped by to vote. Comment and award this. 2. The student was in 11th grade and is also a guy. 3. I genuinely thought I'd saved the pic but after 2 moves of job, including a change of country, I can't find it. Not a teacher. But my 3rd grade teacher had to confiscate a dead rat from a kid in my class. Live rats are hard to catch. Dead rats not so much. This kid had a backpack full of baby rabbits. He found them in the field on the way to school. They were so tiny and vulnerable. We both cried. A homemade shiv. His dad has just gotten out of jail and given it to him. So he brought it to school. I teach kindergarten. BTW. That's less weird and more sad and messed up. Not a teacher but our vice principal had to confiscate a lobster from us after we bought it as a birthday gift for a friend. For those asking, it was a live lobster. We wrapped it in a box with some holes poked in it. When we presented it to him during first break, he just heard something scratching inside it and asked, "WTF is this?" Had to take a computer away from a kid because he had 2 Google tabs, search and images, open with the search naked nude Pokemon PRN in class. Taking a computer away isn't super weird, but that reason has stuck with me for a while. During my student teaching, I had to utter a sentence I never imagined. Which was, "Guys, what did I say about looking up satanic rituals during class?" They were a great group, though. It was a group of 4 8th graders who said they had created an occult detective agency and were doing research just in case. My only complaint was that they were doing it in science class instead of actually doing their work. I did a brief stint as a supply teacher in my early 20s. One day I was at a school I'd never been to before, and there was a group of lads gathered round a table at the back of the room, generally not paying much attention to the lesson. I went to investigate and found they were working on a full-blown diagram of how a male might go about sucking himself off. I confiscated it for research purposes. A real gun I thought was fake. Luckily unloaded. More scary than weird, but not a teacher, but my brother was once asked to return his history teacher's beans, which he had stolen from one of the drawers of said teacher's desk. I've told this story before on Reddit, but it really fits here. One of our 3rd grade teachers had a little boy come to her desk first thing in the morning with an object in his mouth that he was blowing on to make a noise. He said something like, "Look, MRS. Smith, I found this nice whistle in the wastebasket at home." MRS. Smith recognized the object as an applicator for a product used for vaginal yeast infections. The children went to gym class soon after morning announcements, and MRS. Smith noted that the object was left on his desk. She threw it away in the teacher's workroom and called his mother to let her know for the future, so that she could take more care with her trash. Not a teacher, but my wife is. Several years ago she was teaching 2nd or 4th grade and the kids were instructed to have their snack time. She stepped over to the door to talk to another teacher while the kids ate, and one student came over and tattled that another student had a snack he should not have. My wife scolded the tattler for tattling lol, but the kid was insistent. Wife decided to check, and the other kid had legit cracked open a Bud Light Lime-A-Rita for snack time. Not the teacher, but I had a kid in class that would collect used chewing gums from under the table and form them to a giant gross ball. During the lesson he would suck and chew on it and roll it all over the desk. My teacher had enough of it and threw the thing in the trash, and the kid cried. After the lesson the kid got it out of the trash and chewed on it. Edit. Spelling 2. Edit. Thank you for the award, stranger. Excuse me, but WTF. Another student's tooth that he had fished out of the trash can that he was going to add to his tooth collection. Most people wouldn't believe me, as I'm Canadian, but I once found a working but unloaded AK-47 behind a dumpster while on my way to school. Carried it upside down to school. Gave it to the security guard, who was like, "WTF?" Police came a few hours later to ask me to show them where I found it. Turns out there was a f***ing murder there a few days ago and they were looking for the gun. Semicolon. Not quite taken from me by teacher, but still bazzously brought a f***ing used AK-47 murder weapon to school. While like 10. Because why not? A plastic statue of the Virgin Mary with the face melted off. It was so bizarre. I kept it in my desk for many years. When I was in 5th grade my teacher took an unused Kleenex away from me. To be fair, I was putting on a small one-man show to myself at my desk, where the Kleenex was a small ghost. Maybe I may have been being slightly distracting to my classmates, although no one had complained when she walked up and snatched my ghost away. A doll's leg. Me. Why do you have a doll's leg? Student. Why wouldn't I have a doll's leg? Me. Dot. I thought of another one. A kid brought a corkscrew to school. He was in the 2nd grade. I was just ancillary staff for him, for vision hearing issues, consulting, etc. I happened to be there one day and he whipped it out, held it to another kid's neck, before the classroom teacher and I could even react. He sort of threw the kid down and put the corkscrew back into his bag. Then he looked at me and said, "Yay. Ems. Teacher Patsy's here. Let's go read." As if he hadn't just been holding a corkscrew to the neck of another 7-year-old. We didn't do any reading that day. Semicolon. Oh, another one. My babies, and I mean these kids were my babies, loved me and always brought me flowers from the garden. So sweet. I love these two so much. Then one day kid goes, "I bought you jewelry." But he had an Arctic impairment and it sounded like jewelry. So cute. "Did?" I exclaimed. "You get a job, David." He then produces a bullet. "No. I found this gold in my mom's room and thought you might want it." Okay, this is from my perspective as the student who got something taken away. About grade 7 I slammed my finger in the garage door and it completely killed my fingernail. 1 week later I was sitting in class during a movie when my friend dared me to rip the nail right off. It was about halfway on only, so of course I did. It was a slow process and caught a few other classmates' attention. So from the teacher's perspective all she saw was some degenerates huddled in the back corner watching me play with something. So she gets up and walks over to my desk with her hand sticking out demanding whatever we were playing with. So of course I took that as the opportunity to yank my nail off and place it in her hand quickly before she saw what it was. She was not as impressed as my classmates. Not a teacher. But if you were to ask her this would probably be it. Various vegetables. She was super strict about no phones and would check out the slightest sign you might have your phone. As half protest half prank we began our shenanigans. A girl's family member passed away and was texting on her phone about it to other family members. The teacher took her phone. So we began bringing in potatoes, celery, carrots, tomatoes, and other vegetables. We'd smuggle them into class and then hold them under our desks and look at them as though we were texting. She kept trying to catch us, but then just thought we were weird. This goes on for at least a week. Finally she instituted a zero tolerance policy against vegetables. So we switched to fruit. So for a few weeks she was constantly confiscating various fruits and vegetables. We finally stopped when it wasn't as fun anymore. It was December or January and we were having one of those lockdowns where the police come in with dogs to sniff for drugs. We were all locked in our classrooms and no students were allowed out, even to visit the restroom. One of my students was white as a ghost, very afraid. I asked him what's the matter, but it was obvious he was afraid he was about to get busted. He said, "Do you think the dogs will go to my locker?" I said, "I don't know. Do you have something to be worried about?" He said, "There's a ham and cheese sandwich in there." I scratched my head a bit. "I'm sure it's no problem to have a sandwich." He said, "Yeah, but it's been in there since September." Tampons. From 6th grade boys. They like to unwrap, throw, and yell mouse. The girls were like, WTF. Then they found out what they were for in health class. They started adding ketchup. Had to institute a tampon check at the door. For the boys. The girls' room got a Bible full basket of tampons once they got over the idiocy. And that is the only time you will see the phrase, a Bible full basket of tampons, in the history of the written word. I teach in a rural school. And one year I had a very strange kid. He always had all these handmade contraptions that he'd pull out and mess with. One day he was messing with a ruler that had a plastic square attached to the top. It looked really sturdy. His waving it around was distracting me. So I took it away. He told me, "No. I need that. It's for kissing my sister." Not a teacher, but have pretty good memory. Back in elementary school. The class went quiet and the teacher walked over to a kid to confiscate something. She puts her hands out and the kid swiftly puts a wet paper ball on the desk then started crying. Invisible puppies. The theater teacher had his students pretend to take care of puppies in class. They brought them to mine and kept trying to train them in my class. One kid even asked to take theirs in a walk because he needed to get out. I told them the puppies had to stay outside the classroom, so I opened the door and told the puppies to stay.